Hi, my name is Mike Dillard, and this is Self-Made Man, the podcast for men who want to leave their mark on the world and create a legacy of honor, integrity, and achievement in every aspect of their lives. I'm glad you're here, and once again, it is time to forge your destiny. Today, you are going to meet one of the most interesting men in the world. His name is Walter O'Brien, and he's known as the fifth smartest person on the planet with an IQ of 197. His life reads like a real-world comic book where a child prodigy who goes by the hacker name of Scorpion hacks into the government and then gets recruited by that government to build weapon systems. As he gets older, he decides to attract all of the world's geniuses in order to solve the world's biggest problems and creates what is now the top show on CBS to serve as his recruiting tool. And by the way, when his geniuses have some free time, you can actually hire them to solve your biggest challenges in any area of your life, from business to money to relationships. Now, the first time that I heard Walter's story, it sounded unbelievable, but it also sounded like an opportunity. It just so happened that in the last year, we ran into an incredibly difficult challenge with my hydroponic system, which I'm going to cover for you later in the show. I was stuck, the design team was stuck, so I decided to give Walter and his team a call to see if they could help me solve it. 3 months later, we'd found our solution. It's as close as you can get to having a real-world genie in a bottle. You make your wish, and there's a very good chance that they'll be able to grant it. This is going to be an absolutely fascinating episode with a fascinating man who has a great company that I've had a wonderful experience with. This week's recommended resource is a goal management app called Way of Life. Over the years, I've shared my method for getting stuff done, which is extremely simple. I make a daily 3 to 5 list of tasks, and I do them. Each task is like laying a brick in a house. If you lay 3 to 5 bricks every day for a few years, you're going to wake up one day with a mansion. So Way of Life is a digital manifestation of this process for every category of your life. It lets you easily track how productive you're actually being over a period of time in a very simple visual manner. Red bricks are bad, green bricks are good. It's absolutely fantastic. Check it out. It's called Way of Life. With that being said, let's dive into our interview with Walter Scorpion O'Brien. Welcome back, everybody. Mike Dillard here, and I am super excited about today's interview because it is with a gentleman who I have become a very good friend with over the last year and have had an opportunity to work with, Mr. Walter O'Brien. So, Walter, welcome to Self-Made Man, my friend. It is very good to have you here today.
Thank you, Mike. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So, I learned about you through Tim Ferriss's show about a year and a half ago, and your unique set of skills and your unique company and your very, very unique story. In fact, probably the single most unique story that I have ever heard. So, we've got a ton of really amazing stuff to talk about today, since we've not only gotten to know each other personally, but on a work level as well with my hydroponics project. But before we dive into that good stuff, you have to share your story with the audience because it's absolutely fascinating, and I would love it if we could spend a few minutes doing that.
Sure. Thanks for the opportunity. And as I'm learning over time painfully, having a unique story means only unique people get it and engage enough to work with us. So it's nice the people that I encounter, but it's a shame all the people that can't process the story fully. So, dairy farmer's son from Ireland, didn't fit in at home, didn't fit in at school, wasn't sure why. Ended up teachers complaining I asked too many questions. Luckily, they hadn't invented ADHD or Ritalin back then, at least in Ireland. So by 9, they sent me for testing, thinking I was on the autistic scale. Tested out at 197 IQ, the 5th highest in the world. And that explained what was wrong with me. So then I joined the Gifted Children's Society and a few other groups and got my hands on a computer and was self-taught, learned how to code quickly, and then jumped on the ARPANET. By 13, I had hacked into NASA and stolen the shuttle blueprints, got busted by the NSA and Interpol, turned them into my client, and now used my hacker name to open a company called Scorpion when I was 13 years old. The company grew, kind of like Best Buy, kind of like Geek Squad for Best Buy, just running around fixing printers and computers and barcode scanners and just all kinds of glamorous work like that. And then as I got busier, I needed to hire my friends to help me. So the only friends I trusted were the ones who hadn't bullied me in high school, which were the smarter ones from the prodigies from the society. Trouble was, when I put 2 of them on a project, they'd try and kill each other while insulting the customer. And that became known as a phenomenon that the higher the IQ, often the lower the EQ, the emotional intelligence, common sense, social skills. So I did what any engineer would do. I went out and bought my missing parts. So I hired single moms, elementary school teachers, and psychologists who had high EQ scores, typically with PMP certifications. So they were project management professionals. And we nicknamed them the super nannies. So they would babysit the geniuses and the customers. So now we had the best communicators working with the best thinkers, and my little think tank kind of worked. So we scaled and we went from fixing printers and computers all the way up to fixing massive ERP manufacturing systems, mutual funds, supply chains, smart grids, ballistic missile systems, anything where it was mission critical, and either you lose millions of dollars or people die if you screw it up. And we got very good at not screwing up and basically trying to mitigate the risk out of anything.
Well, real quick, I got to stop you. For those who haven't heard it, what do you mean you stole the blueprints for the space shuttle? Because he just glanced over that as a matter of fact. So we've got to go back and fill that in just a little bit.
Well, for those that are old school like me who remember like the late 80s on computers, there was nothing on them. There was no JPEGs, there was no pictures, there was no high resolution images. All you had was like plot points on screen. And there was a format of an AutoCAD file called DWG, stood for drawing file. And I found one on the ARPANET going through CompuServe. So I was on long distance, slow modem dial-up. This was a huge file. Now, a huge file back then might have been 2 megabytes or so. So I wanted to download it. So I tried. And then when I was 10 minutes into it, I got cut off. And I thought it was just crappy phone lines. And I went in again. And exactly in the same 10 minutes, I got cut off. So if you've ever tried telling a 13-year-old they can't have something, suddenly they had my attention. So I got in and found the computers that were detecting me as a foreign IP address and then cutting me off. And I wrote some code to keep them busy. And then I wrote some code that would concatenate the binaries together. So every 10 minutes, I would pick up where I left off and download the next piece and then reattach them on my machine, kind of like Torrent does today. And that was it. It took like 2 days. And eventually I got all the pieces down. I loaded up on my computer, an AutoCAD program. And all I saw was a little circle. And I was really disappointed. And I just kind of threw my hands up to the desk and hit the little mouse scroll button. And it scrolled out a little bit. And I saw another circle. And I scrolled again. And I saw another circle. And I kept zooming out. And it turns out I was zoomed in on the center of the hub of the wheel of the landing gear of the shuttle. And if I zoomed all the way out, I'd see the whole shuttle. So I just printed that in a biggest plotter I could find and put it on my bedroom wall.
So what, how did the authorities figure that out and track you down? And what did that experience look like?
I would love to have a great, cool cyber story of how they stalked me and tracked me down. But the truth is, when you're on a dial-up modem, I'm on my dad's home phone number dialing out. They could pretty much look it up in a reverse lookup of the yellow pages. So it wasn't hard to find me at all.
And were they surprised with, who you were on the other end, a 13-year-old kid versus some cyber criminal,
Well, yeah, I mean, the Cold War was around then too. So they were just happy I wasn't the Russians. But yeah, there was a lot of kind of looking over my shoulder going, are you sure it's him? And my parents are farmers. So they're like, well, it ain't them. So I was the only one there capable of doing it. When we did a deal and I said, well, I'll show you how to stop other people doing it. When I started describing what they needed to do to stop someone else doing it, they're like, we're going to need you to come and talk to other people because they didn't understand what I was saying.
Yeah, that's interesting. And, there's been quite a few other projects that you've had an opportunity to work on over the years for the government and some other institutions, countries even. Can you share some of the most interesting with us?
Sure. Yeah. Some of it's been either WikiLeaked or declassified by now. So we work on image recognition stuff from drones 30,000 feet up. So if we see 2 white pixels moving in parallel beside the road, we know it's hands on a shovel planting an IED. And we can GPS tag that person and have the IED disabled before anyone's hurt. If a car makes multiple U-turns in front of an embassy with the same license plate number, it's potentially staking out for a car bombing. So we can detect these, what's called OOIs, objects of interest, and stop bad things happening before they do. We have used similar technology to do facial recognition to blacklist people from casinos. in Vegas or other institutions where they want to make sure certain people never come back. We have worked on war game planning for Afghanistan, where we used a program we have called Szen AI. It's an artificial intelligence that does 250 human years of thinking every 90 minutes. It's kind of like our secret weapon. And we used it to predict if everyone attacked everyone else in every way, what would be the largest devastating losses of human life. And one of them was biological contamination of the water supply to the base using arsenic. And we predicted that 3 months before it actually happened. And because we'd put safety precautions in place that got triggered, nobody got hurt. Otherwise, about 400 people would have died in 2 days.
I know you guys you've had a role too with the development of the Aegis missile system, correct?
Correct. We are on Aegis. It's a long-term, 40-year project now, but it's been we haven't been on it 40 years, but it's about a $10 billion project, and our technology is used in that, and Szen AI has been applied to it. Unfortunately, that's all I can say about that. Also, Agile, which is the command and control system that the U.S. Navy uses, and also nuclear subs. So a lot of these areas have secret networks that need to be super protected, and obviously anything nuclear shouldn't be hacked. So we have technology that kind of is like a robot hacker that will exhaustively hack something from every possible angle. So by the time we're done with it, it's hard for someone else to come up with a way of hacking it that hasn't already been tried. So kind of like super testers.
So I'm going to put you on the spot here because we didn't talk about this earlier, but it's a question that's just popped in my head. Discussing Szen AI, have you guys run any simulations on the current state of the world, and what have you learned from that simulation? Let's just say geopolitically.
For a lot of it, I'd say I'm not sure we even need Szen AI to see where things are headed. It's going to be we're in for a bumpy ride, to quote Hollywood. Well, with Szen AI, you have to be able to, just to explain it briefly, it's kind of like two chess computers playing each other. So you have to put in all the pieces and you have to put in all the possible moves, and then it generates everything that could happen. Doing that for the world would be too big a simulation. There's too many variables. Even though Szen AI could handle it, we couldn't. We couldn't read it. Where it's useful is if you have a system or an interface or a piece of software or a machine that has 42 levers on it, and you want to come up with 134 million combinations of tests and then run them all. So you have to narrow things down to a chess game to be able to see all the outcomes. The world geopolitically is too emotional, based on just infinite political rules and possible happenings.
I see. Gotcha.
Obviously, I have my own predictions on where the market and everything else is going to go, and I've judged my money accordingly. And I did the same thing in 2007 and was very glad I did. So I have looked at things like inverse equity funds that make money by shorting the market instead of making money by investing in it. And sometimes that's a better bet.
Yeah. Well, I've gone down the investing path and won some and lost some, but that would be a whole other call. So essentially, what you did was band together a group of geniuses with really high IQs to solve, frankly, all of the world's greatest problems, and you've paired them with nannies, if you will, who have really high EQs that can communicate between the geniuses and your average citizen, if you will. And that became a company called Scorpion Computer Services and Concierge Up. And so walk us through both of those, if you would.
Sure. So for 20 years, we only solved technical problems, mainly because my background and degrees were in artificial intelligence and computer science. So that was my comfort zone. And as technology took over the world and started, everything is technology now, every business is affected by it, that we got dragged all over the world too. And it was a bit of one of those epiphanies you get when you're sitting on a rock meditating, where you're like, wait a minute, I'm not just solving technical problems anymore. I'm solving all kinds of problems. But if I was going to solve those problems, let's say I was planning my wedding or my divorce, I would actually have the same people solve it in the same way. Gather my requirements, manage my risk, work on my budget, pivot if I learn something new, use lean startup methodology, have a disaster recovery plan, test out my theories for failover and fail back. In case it rains on my wedding day, have a backup plan, etc. And these are all computer terminology, but they apply to life. So Scorpion Computer Services is the main think tank, and that's what we do. We solve any kind of problem. And then Concierge Up is a portal that people can just go to and type in any wish they want, any funded need of what they'd like someone to help them with. Research this, make this book a bestseller, try to, figure out my mom's throat cancer, retire my parents to Florida. My daughter has anorexia, try to find all food that's odorless and tasteless, but high in calories and fat. My son fell in love with a Ukrainian gold digger, break him up before the wedding. I want to make a documentary for my favorite charity so they can use it to make more money. And I want to connect it to the UN somehow, or I need to reach this celebrity and have them endorse my project. So some of those are technical solutions. Some of those are kind of like a mixture of CIA, special operations, and PR and publicity stunts.
Let's talk about the Ukrainian divorce scenario, because I've heard this story and it's pretty freaking amazing.
Sure, absolutely. So, billionaire in Europe, his son fell in love with a Ukrainian gold digger. The relationship between the father and the son was pretty tenuous at best. So, if he interfered one more time, he was scared he'd lose his son, but he also knew it was a really bad idea for his son to get married to this lady. So, we enlisted another friend of ours who was a billionaire and had a son that we had actually helped on the health front previously. So, he was happy to act as an agent for us. And he rented a mansion down the street from the first guy. And they wore the same suits and they drove the same cars and they went to the same clubs. So it took about a month before they became fast friends and met each other. And then on the Ukrainian side, she goes to the same Starbucks every morning after her gym. So we had another Ukrainian girl who works for us, another agent, be in her Louis Vuittons and her designer jeans and stand in front of her in line the first day and talk loudly in her native tongue on her phone. And they didn't talk to each other. Second day, she was behind her in line, and they still didn't talk to each other. So the third day, we filled the restaurant with extras, actors, and left one seat available next to this other girl. So she kind of had to sit there. And they sat and they started talking, and our girl was wearing a wire. And as they talked and swapped stories about how naive Americans are and how easy it is to do gold digging, the other girl finally kind of broke and said, yeah, I've got this billionaire son on the hook. I'm going to marry him, get my green card, get a divorce, and then use the money to bring my real boyfriend over from the Ukraine. Now, the interesting part of that is that recording's not for the father because he already knows. It's not for a courtroom because it's inadmissible in court. We can't play it for the son because he'd know we interfered. So that was actually just for me because Scorpion get asked to do all kinds of things, and I got to make sure they're either good for the planet in general or at least neutral, and we'll use the profits for philanthropy. So I had to know they weren't really in love. And as soon as I heard that recording, as the guys in the office here say, she fell on the wrong side of my fairness algorithm. So then we start putting actions into place. So we put a speech together for the father of things he should never say to the son. We got an acting coach to show him how to say it. We texted him on a Thursday night to trigger the argument. The son's livid and grabs his bag and leaves the house and goes down predictably to his closest friend's house, our agent. Our agent empathizes with him and says, you should get revenge on your father, but I don't know how. He said, you're welcome to stay here, but I leave tomorrow to the Dominican Republic because my friend's getting married. And it takes a second, but the son then says, yes, that's it. I'll grab the Ukrainian girl and we'll go to the Dominican Republic and get married right after your guy gets married. So that's what they did. They left the next day. They had the first wedding and then they had the second wedding with the same priest. And then while she was on her honeymoon, we saw her online activity as she filed for her green card and her paperwork and everything else. And it takes a little while after that when their honeymoon's over and the paperwork's in processing. She then wants to file for divorce and asks for an exorbitant amount of money. So we told her, come to our offices downtown. We have the settlement for her. It's the first time she was on time for a meeting. She hadn't seen us or me before. And I come in, I hand her a contract that she thought was her settlement. She reads it and says, this is an acting contract. And I said, I know. Do you recognize the signature? She looks in the back page and turns white because the signature was the priest who married them in the Dominican Republic. So he was an actor. They were all actors. The first wedding was fake. The second wedding was fake. The second letter she got was from Homeland Security banning her from the U.S. for 10 years because she had filed a fake marriage certificate. And her Uber was waiting outside with her bags to take her to the airport. She was under a gag order to never talk to the son again and wrote a letter in her handwriting back to the son, say she didn't want to talk to him again. She didn't want anything from him. He gets the letter. It's a huge sigh of relief to him because he thought he screwed up exactly the way his dad said he would. And him and his father are rebonding because the father never interfered.
Crazy. I mean, it's just straight out of James Bond. So, how do you guys pull together everything required to do something like that?
Well, that's the interesting thing. The more we do, the more we can do, meaning the more problems we solve, the more resources we have. We have psychologists, doctors, lawyers, acting coaches, nuclear physicists, obviously tons of programmers and hackers. And these people either work for us or work on contract. And typically we've done them favors in the past or helped them out being expert witnesses on their court cases and things like that. So it's one of those tightly knit families where everyone owes everyone a favor and they immediately jump when we have a mission. Now, the other part of this that helps is we were getting up to 2,800 requests a month, and we didn't have enough geniuses to fulfill all the missions. So we had a problem now where I needed to find more geniuses. So I got my guys together and said, now I have a funded problem. How do I find more geniuses? And they said, well, if you write a book, the millennials probably won't read it. If you make a movie, they'll forget your name in 6 months. But if you replace CSI as the number one show on the air for the next 10 years, the geniuses will come find you. And the 12-year-olds in this country might grow up wanting to be scientists instead of wanting to be Kim Kardashian. And I thought, well, that might be good for the country. So we got the producers of Transformers, Spider-Man, and Star Trek, the director of Fast and the Furious, the writers of Sopranos, Prison Break, and Hostages, got them all together. This was 3 years ago now, and made the TV show Scorpion, where the company's called Scorpion and the main character is called Walter O'Brien. And he manages geniuses using Catherine McPhee as a super nanny with high EQ. And that TV show now is in 188 countries and is number one or two in a lot of those countries and has been the number one hit for CBS. 26 million viewers of the pilot. And we get letters from 12-year-olds all the time saying they're now going to study computer science. They want to know what laptop I use. They want to know what language I study, et cetera, so they can follow in my footsteps.
Very cool. I've watched the first 3 seasons, and it's great. It's kind of like to me, it's kind of like a futuristic MacGyver in the way you'll solve unique problems in unique circumstances, and with very imaginative tools and solutions. So it's super cool. I would highly recommend it.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's really where, our paths crossed probably, around a year ago, 9 to 12 months ago, I'd say, maybe a little less than that. But in the development of my hydroponic system with Whipsaw, we had run into a very unique challenge when it came to dealing with the very diverse sources of water that are found throughout every municipality and community in the world. And it's quite interesting, given the fact that I don't have a background in botany or horticulture. This was a problem that I didn't really anticipate, but the hardness of the water specifically, the amount of mineral content, etc., can affect plant growth in a very substantial way to the point where there are some areas in the United States where it really doesn't work at all, and you would have to use distilled water or somehow filter the water out. And I didn't really know how to solve that. The team at Whipsaw didn't know how to solve it because they didn't have a background in botany or horticulture either. Heard your podcast with Tim, decided to give you a call and shot you guys a request in your email form. And, lo and behold, about a month or two later, I got a response and shared my problem and project with you. And, I think a week or two later, I was working with 3 members of your team on an ongoing basis to help solve this solution, which was awesome.
Yeah, and like I said, someone's got to have a problem. They got to be willing to admit they might need help with it, and they got to be willing to pay someone else to try and fix it with them. And that it takes a rare breed of entrepreneur to admit they have a problem and that maybe they're not the smartest person in the room to solve it always. And those make great customers because it means we solve difficult problems for nice people rather than the other way around. And we got to know each other through that. And my guys enjoyed working with you. And even though we're working on a nasty problem that was difficult and nobody had solved it and it was frustrating, we didn't take any frustration out on each other, which was, that's all I look for. We'll never give up on a problem, but we do walk away from awkward people. And, it's really, there's a quote by Einstein that says, if we knew what we were doing, we wouldn't call it research, would we? And a lot of people don't get that. They want a guarantee and a fixed bid, even though we're doing something that's never been done before and no one else could do it. So to be able to roll with the punches and fail faster and try different methods and try different theories and just judge that everyone's doing their best, that's all you can hope for.
Yeah, it was awesome. It was a great experience.
I think you got exposed a bit to our kind of formal process on how we break things down, look at things for our weekly meetings and stuff. And it seems like you adapted to that a little bit.
No, I mean, it's great for a solo entrepreneur like myself, or really, I don't have a team of brilliant engineers or scientists on staff. So to get access to a team like yours, for a project per project basis, or ongoing basis, as much as I need or as little as I need was super cool. It was just a really neat opportunity, that worked out well, and the guys were awesome. So the reason I bring that up for everybody listening is, Scorpion's real, Walter's real. They do a great job and amazing work, and it was a really cool experience. So if those of you who are out there listening have a unique problem of any kind that you want help with, reach out and see if you can work with them. And it was 2 thumbs up. It was awesome.
Thank you. And I hope we can work together on stuff in the future whenever something else comes up that no one else is an obvious fit for.
Yeah, absolutely.
We're kind of the catch-all.
Absolutely. I'm looking forward to giving you guys a call when I'm ready to build my bunker and self-sustainable ranch in the hill country at some point. So, because I know you've done that before as well.
We have, and we had one person asking us to build a 30-foot rock wall to a bunker that doesn't use electricity or hydraulics to open and close. So you're talking a Indiana Jones type weighted system, because they wanted to protect against an EMP device going off, and if that goes off, they may not have electricity to close the door or open it. But speaking of which, you did a podcast a while back on bug out bags with a SEAL Team 8 member, and we've looked at that, and I'm a bug out bag kind of preparation survivalist guy, so I sat there with my pen and paper and took good notes from that, and now I have my Glock and my bullpup and my shotgun and all the other stuff that you recommended in that video.
Nice. Very cool. So, Walter, we could sit here and go through some of your stories and projects that you guys have worked on, forever, and it would be amazing. But I wanted to make sure that we, went into some tangible takeaways that you guys could provide our listeners with, as far as some of your services goes, knowing who my audience is and what everybody here is working on. One of the things that y'all provide, which I think is extremely valuable for people, is the fact that you're basically an outsourced research company. When it comes to businesses, specifically, I know y'all have a ton of experience when it comes to doing due diligence on companies that people are thinking about buying. So if I'm thinking about buying a small business, you guys would come in A to Z. You've got a massive process that you would take it through, and you'd come back to me with a report that says thumbs up, thumbs down. Here's what's good. Here's what's not good. Same on the acquisition side. The sell side. If I'm looking to sell my business, you could walk me through a checklist and a process, make sure everything is where it needs to be, go through and really help negotiate the offer if needed, and to set things up in escrow to where the company and the IP is successfully transferred and you've seen it through to exit. So there's a lot of things y'all do for businesses, and even on the software evaluation side, where it's like, hey, Walter, I want to do this. This is the company that's given me a quote. What do you think about their proposal? Is it fair? Is it accurate? Or is it not? So if you could maybe walk through a couple of examples in those 3 areas specifically when it comes to helping out some of the listeners today.
Absolutely. Yeah, happy to. Look, we're all busy. In some ways, what we do is allow you to buy time to look into the things you don't have time to look into, but you need someone sensible who's been around the block to do it for you. And we've been involved everywhere in the life cycle of companies. So from you're going to buy out a company, or you're just going to use the components or library or systems from that company, and you're going to be heavily dependent on it, and they've told you a good story, we can go in. We have developed over the years a 240-point inspection. It's kind of like if your neighbor was a mechanic and you're going to bring him to look at a used car. We'll go through everything down to the windshield washers and tell you what's real or what isn't. And we'll give you that company a grade, A, B, C, D, or fail, on how they do on those points, and then tell you if they're fixable or not, or what their valuation is. Maybe they thought they were worth $5 million, but it's going to cost you $2 million to fix all the problems we found, so they're really worth $3 million. And we can help you with those negotiations. On the flip side, if you're the company who's selling, then we come in as kind of like your internal auditors. We do the same process. We find the issues you have, we offer to fix them or tell you what your options are, and then we produce a due diligence package. So when your real investors come along and they bring their due diligence people in, you shine because everything they ask for, you've already looked into, you've already shored it up, and you've already prepared a report for them. So you just hand it over. And your investor then's reaction is, wow, these guys have their stuff together and know what they're doing and are very professional. So it usually moves forward very swiftly. So instead of being stuck in weeks and weeks and weeks of audits, after 2 or 3 days, they walk away going, everything looks solid. Let's move forward with negotiations. And we've seen that happen over and over again. We've had people stuck in businesses where they've been funding them for a while, funding a startup every month, maybe 500K or 200K. And they're like, these guys were supposed to deliver 6 months ago. They're still at it. They're telling me every month that they're almost there. Do I pull the plug because they don't know what they're doing? Or am I a fool and I should hang in there another month and everything will be fine? And you don't know, but we do because we can read the source code. We can go in and look at the problems. We can see, are these unforeseeable problems that are really issues and they're genuinely doing their best, or they really don't know what they're doing and they're just partying on your money and enjoying it. That old adage that experts are expensive, but amateurs are really expensive. That comes very true when it comes to software.
Yes. Go ahead.
I was going to say other versions of those circumstances, people have a company or inherit one from their parents and they want to update it or bring it up to speed or beat the competition or put secret sauce in the company. Or they're like, the company runs great, but I want to automate it or add artificial intelligence to it. Or I think this can be optimized to be 30% faster, but I don't have the skill or the math to do it. So they hire us to do it. Or they say, is there cheaper packaging in China? Is there a better plastic I can use for this? Is there a cheaper way of delivering this stuff logistically? And yeah, you could jump on Google and try and do it yourself and call lawyers and reference check. But before you know it, you've spent 40 hours doing that and you have a day job. So let us spend the 40 hours doing all that and spend 1 hour telling you the results. And that's really what it's all about. It is outsourced research, but it's not just academic research. It's anything you would have to start Googling yourself. That's complicated.
So I've gone through the software development process twice during my career, and both times it was unbelievably expensive, and both times ended in disaster. So I can definitely relate to the value of what you guys are providing. And just to give people some context, the first software platform we developed was a proprietary shopping cart and CRM, because 7, 8, 9 years ago, the capabilities we needed in an all-in-one service didn't exist. There was no Infusionsoft or anything like that. And, instantly it became a $30,000 a month overhead piece that was never, 100% working or functional. There was always something that was breaking that needed to be fixed. And no matter what, even if we didn't add new features or functions to it, it just magically seemed to happen that we'd have another $30,000 a month bill, from repairs, right? And so why are we paying to have a platform fix that we already paid to have this team create? Now we've got to pay for their mistakes and bug fixes, right? So that was mistake number one. Mistake number two is years ago, I developed a social media platform similar to MySpace for the networking niche, and it took off like crazy. It became one of the most trafficked websites in the world. We had over 1.5 million pieces of unique content uploaded to it in the first year. And it was developed by one guy. And so that is the big trap that I want everybody listening to this to be able to avoid, which is you have an idea, requires some software development, and you go out and you hire your guy, your tech guy, who might have the skills to make it. But what tends to happen, as Walter mentioned earlier, entrepreneurs generally don't have the language that the software engineers and developers speak. And so the only option you have when they tell you that they need to work on something or do something or develop something is you're like, okay, well, do whatever you need to do, because you don't know if that's actually true or the case or not, because you don't speak their language, right? So, the next trap that I fell into on that specific platform is the developer wants to make you happy. So when you say, hey, I need this feature, they'll go in and code it as quickly as they can. And they'll do it without any kind of documentation, which is a huge no-no in the software development world, because if they get run over by a truck or get fired or whatever, the next replacement who comes in has no idea why they've coded any of the stuff the way that they have. And so it essentially ends up being this giant leaning tower of crap, frankly, a spaghetti code, that eventually topples under its own weight. And that's what happened with my site. I have one of the most trafficked sites in the world now, and it's falling apart, and there's no way to fix it because everything was done in such a disorganized manner that my only option was to literally start over, spend another $1 million in money to rebuild the entire thing from scratch, because that would be less expensive than to try and fix what was already in existence. So, I really wish, Walter, that I had known of you guys back then so that I could have at least gotten your guidance and help, if not having y'all design it specifically in-house on the Scorpion side, having you evaluate the team that I was going to hire to do it and really essentially manage the process and the project. It would have saved me well over $1 million. So anyway, that's been my personal experience in how I would have utilized you guys.
Yeah, no, look, those stories are all too common. I think Gartner or someone published years ago that 86% of software projects fail. And that's the reason why. Everyone underestimates how complex they are. And then they either have a single point of failure where one person does spaghetti code, or to get a whole team together that didn't read the requirements, and off they go. If that was in construction, imagine 86% of all buildings falling down. It would be disastrous. But we have building codes, and we have auditors, and you have structural engineers, and people who make it earthquake safe, and certified electricians and plumbers and so on. But when it comes to computers, anyone can say they're a computer guy. You may not even check if they have a degree in computer science, and then they're just off coding, and you can't read the code. So no wonder it ends in disaster, because it's an uncertified, unqualified, unmeasurable, unaudited industry. And we're trying to be the auditors out there. If you don't hire us to build it, at least hire us to double check it, so you can get a doctor's second opinion on what's going on.
Yeah, absolutely. So, what else would you like to leave the audience here with today? Maybe one final takeaway.
Sure. Well, the way to get to us is conciergeup.com or scorpioncomputerservices.com. And what it'll take you to very quickly, besides our background, is just a little form where you can type in what you want. And you don't need a big, long specification. Just a one-line sentence will do. It can be very high level and fuzzy. You can say something like, my website's slow and broken and I don't know why. And all that will do is trigger a chance to talk to our super nannies and talk to the folks here with no obligation, and just talk through your problem. Try us out. Talk to us for 5 minutes and figure out very quickly if you like us or not. The other thing is our rates average $150 an hour, depending on the size of the team that you get, and you pay as you go. There's no long-term contracts. It's a 10 grand minimum, but just like a deposit at a law firm, if you don't use it, you get your money back. So there's no long-term commitment, and there's no reason not to talk to us. So think of your 3 top wishes or pain points, type them into Concierge Up now, and let someone get back to you and have a chat with you. And if we can't help, we can't help, but generally we can. And, reach out to Rent-A-Brain and have a conversation with some people that may be able to help.
Your new brand, Rent-A-Brain. Very cool. Yeah, it's been a great experience, Walter. It's been a pleasure getting to know you. We got to spend some time together in Utah at the Baby Bathwater event, which was awesome. And we also have a shared passion for Italian sports cars, which has been really fun to talk about as well. Just for fun, tell everybody about your, take when it comes to exotic cars. If there's any advice you could provide to someone out there who's looking to get into that world, who has a passion for it, what would you recommend?
Well, first thing I'd recommend, if possible, is whatever car you're thinking of getting, rent it for a week. It'll be the best $2 grand you've ever spent. Drive it around, take it to the shops, go through a drive-through, try to go to the movie theater, because either it'll be the most fun thing you've ever done and you love it, or it'll be the most awkward thing you've ever had. You'll hate it. You'll worry about people scratching it or parking next to you, and you won't be able to put your shopping in it. And you're like, this isn't what I thought. And it's a lot better to do that for $2 grand than 200 grand before you find out if you like it. Now, that's if you haven't owned an exotic car before. Life's too short not to enjoy life. And, having a weekend runabout that you can have fun in that sounds Italian generally is just one of the true rare experiences in life that puts a smile on your face and immediately takes the stress away, especially after a shitty day at work. So I have a Lamborghini, I have a Ferrari, I have a Barabbas, I'm looking at Excaliburs, and I'm all of them because they're entirely different from each other. One wants to bite my head off, one wants to put me asleep. The Ferrari's a nice in-between where in automatic mode with the top up, I can actually make a phone call. And if I open up the Novatec exhaust system and let the top down, I can be a hooligan. it's kind of like women with shoes. They have shoes for different moods and different occasions, and men have cars for the same thing. You want to go up in the mountains and carve up a road, then get yourself a Lotus with a low center of gravity. And it's kind of like pets matching their owners. Everyone has a different personality. It'll be reflected in the car they get. I'd say pay medium. If you go for the super cheap one, there's a reason it's super cheap. And don't get ripped off with the super expensive one. So I generally go for medium pricing and medium miles and medium everything. And I buy at the bottom of the depreciation curve. And a good way to think about it is, let's say you get a red on tan Ferrari that's about 110, 120 grand. You're not blowing 110 or 120 grand. You had it in your bank account. It was going to sit there anyway. Now you have it sitting in your garage, fully insured. And guess what? 5-10 years from now, you can still sell it for 90 or 100 grand. So you're going to lose 10 grand on it, which is less than you'd lose on a regular car with regular depreciation, because that will depreciate all the way down to zero. And a red Ferrari never will. So instead of that 100 grand sitting in your bank account, have it sit in your garage and put a smile on your face.
I love it. I love it. I love it. And I feel the same way. So thanks for humoring me on that. And Walter, thanks so much for your time and for what you guys do. Guys, if you want to get in touch with Walter, just head over to conciergeup.com. We'll have the links on the blog here with this podcast episode as well. And make sure that you check out Scorpion on, was it CBS, correct?
Yeah, CBS.
On CBS. It's a fantastic show. I've seen the first 3 seasons. And your kids will love it. It's definitely appropriate for that and very much inspiring in the way that Walter mentioned earlier. So, Walter, thank you once again for the time. Looking forward to connecting with you in the future. And thank you all out there for listening once again. And we'll see you next week. Take care.